Without waiting any longer, we might just get underway. So good evening, everyone. My name's Alicia Sutherland. I'm the president of the IABC Queensland board, and thanks for joining us for tonight's masterclass. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands where we meet tonight and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And I'd like to extend this acknowledgement to those First Nations people joining us tonight. And now about tonight's event, I'm delighted to welcome Hayley Langsdorf as our facilitator in this very interactive session. We're going to learn more about the power of visual communication tonight and some ways you can start to really bring that more into your practice. So I hope you all have your pens and paper ready. But look, we will get underway. I'd now like to introduce Hayley Langsdorf, who is the owner and creator of Thoughts Drawn Out. Hayley works with businesses and teams through graphic recording, visual facilitation and illustration to help them define problems, set compelling strategies, make change happen and tell their story. Hayley has worked with some of Australia's most recognisable brands to help map out strategies and communicate change. Everyone from Rio Tinto to TAFE to the University of Queensland, Suncorp, Healthy Land and Water and more. And through her work, she's demonstrated how visual communication can really have a huge impact on people's understanding and acceptance of change, which is so important. Hayley also helps other communicators to build new skills in visual communication, which is precisely why she's here tonight. I'm really looking forward to learning how I can bring a bit more colour into comms too. And so now I'd like to hand over to Hayley.
Thank you, Alicia. What a lovely intro. So I'm just going to start by bringing up some slides. So Mel did brief me that I'm talking to you about visual communication. So I immediately got out a pen and scribbled a line through that and said, no, let's just talk about doodling, because really that's kind of the guts of what I want to share with you tonight, is about getting past the formal and the way it should be and, you know, perfectly left justified content that matches a brand guide, which has its place. But what I want to talk to you about tonight is in that rough human pictures as a way to communicate and connect as humans. So my brand of that style is visual storytelling, usually hand-drawn, a combination of pictures and words put together in ways that connect with people. So when I talk about visual storytelling, underneath the hood, I'm talking about the three domains coming together that I've got down in that bottom left corner there: connecting dots, sharing stories, and making pictures. And visual storytelling is different combinations of bringing those domains together. Now, all three of these things are so inherently human. We do them all the time and always have. So connecting dots, it's just this natural way our brains work. We love patterns. We find patterns, we see patterns, we speak in patterns, we make patterns on our pages. It's a built-in part of our brain. Part of that actually comes right back to a survival mechanism of being able to recognize the patterns that make up a face. Because it's a real advantage if you can see the face of something or someone about to leap out and attack you, than if you didn't see it coming. So right back to this kind of survival mechanism, we can find faces even when there aren't any. I don't know if you've experienced that phenomenon where you see a face in like a tile pattern or a carpet or something, and then you can't unsee that. Like once it's there, we're just wired that way. We look for patterns and we find them everywhere. And that's partly why the other things come into play and work together, the sharing stories and the making pictures as well. So stories are also about patterns because they have this lovely rhythmic flow to them, the narrative arc, and our brains sense that pattern early on. We feel like it's setting up for a story. We've been introduced to a setting. We feel some tension rising, and our brain releases dopamine. We latch in, we go, oh, story. Dopamine releases, our brain starts neural coupling. We start mirroring because we want to step into the shoes of the protagonist and go on that story with them. And then when you overlay visuals over that, if I take you on that narrative arc and then go, and here's what the character looks like, it's there. That's what's going to stay in your brain. You're going to see that little critter. Like even now, as I'm telling you this content, if you're looking at that little critter down the bottom with his red hands on hips, that's going to stay in your mind because you're going to connect that visual with this piece of information and that story that I just told you. And that's what's going to stay. So it has that magical ability of doing that. So not only do our brains release dopamine when we start to hear that narrative arc, they're also really wired for the visual component too. Like we've been making sense of things through pictures for thousands of years. So we have so many sensory receptors in our brain and all throughout our bodies, but more than 70% of them are connected to vision. And more than 50% of your brain is used in visual processing. So you can gain the sense of a visual scene in less than 1/10 of a second. You can imagine how much longer it would take to get that same amount of information in words alone. It's just this powerful shortcut. It also means that if we're telling stories or creating content, sharing information in this way, we are lighting up more of the brain. So we are creating greater cognition. We are triggering greater memory centers. And that's why I like to say that great visual stories are like time machines, because if you were there while it was being made and then you revisit it later, it just transports you straight back to where it started. So they're just these lovely little kind of time machines for our mind. So I've just got a delay with my slides. Go this one. Okay, so I promise this is the only graph I'm going to show you. This is the most boring slide I have, and I'm not going to be here long. When I talk about visual storytelling, and especially the sorts of doodling that we're going to focus on tonight, I'm going to give people a bit of a picture that can come in a bunch of different forms, that can look like a bunch of different things. And I like to kind of plot them on this quadrant model around whether they are unplanned or planned, or passive or active. And I start down in this bottom right-hand corner, because if you can get this bit right, then you can take it to all of those other places. But that's where the kind of core skills sit. I say unplanned and passive because visual note-taking can be impromptu. It can be just grab a pen, grab a bit of paper, and I'm jotting down what I'm hearing because I don't want to lose it. It's passive because no one even has to know you're doing it. You can be note-taking in a meeting and no one even knows it's happening. Versus something that's quite active, where you are both leading a conversation, gathering information from people, making sense of it in real time, which can be quite active. You can be directing and driving a conversation. And very planned, you might come into that with a pre-drawn canvas that you add content onto, right through to kind of doing live visual presentation where you are drawing, you are building, you are doing the whole lot all at the same time. But it all starts with some visual note-taking skills, the doodle toolkit, which is what we're going to jump into. So what I have next is just a few examples of these, literally kind of, from my sketchbook and from my photo album, just to give you an idea what I'm on about. So this is a photo out of a notebook. I think it was an A5 notebook, a sketch note I did, pen on paper in a lunch and learn. It was probably a 30-40 minute talk. You can even see at the top of the scan there, the dots where I've pulled that page out of a spiral notebook. from years ago. So small paper, small pens, I'm listening to a lunch and learn session and I'm taking notes. Same skill, but now bigger paper, bigger pens. This is now live scribing at a conference or graphic recording. So you can see just kind of over my right shoulder is a stage there. This was at Myriad conference a few years back, if anyone was there. So there's the whole conference going on and I'm just off to the side and I'm drawing the conference. I'm drawing everything everyone says. So by the end of each day, I would have a meter wide by 2 meters deep illustration of everything that was discussed. Again, same skills, we're just using bigger pens, bigger paper, and now it's slightly less passive because people are watching. Same thing again, but we've now gone digital. Okay, so we left the digital live scribe and I've now moved through into something which is more of a planned facilitation, co-facilitation. So I worked with the facilitator ahead of this event to come up with a visual metaphor that drove both how the sessions of a workshop were being talked about, as well as how I was then going to capture that output. So the background was pre-drawn. And then as each of those facilitators came out of their rooms with their flip charts, I then summarized their content and added it over the top of this picture. So just another example of doodling in practice, but with a different approach. Similarly, this was a piece of work with a company who had agreed values and wanted to workshop what they look like and what they meant for everybody. We had a metaphor of kind of making it to Everest when we went into this session. I started with 5 blank circles, just the headings off to the side. And then the sketchnote content came from conversations with people around what these values meant to them. And then together we agreed on the best icon that brought them to life. So some planned content, some live content, some post-produced content, but again, same toolkit. I won't go through these in detail, but just to show you getting into business documentation, this was a persona that's been illustrated with doodles using the same software, same skills, and a customer journey map, again, with the illustrations created in on an iPad. Same skill set, same sorts of icons, just a new style, basically. And then again, a strategy map. Now, I've tried to pick a bunch of different examples so that you can see all of the different ways you could apply this, but the fact that these are all so very different industries. You just saw a flood modeling community workshop, a strategy map for a chicken farm, personas and journey maps for a college. It's from all different places, all different sorts of organizations and companies, because this is a universal language. So before we jump into these principles, I do just want to pause there to see if anybody has any questions. No, good so far. Okay. Well, this is the point where I ask you to grab a pen and a bit of paper, because I'm going to get you to start doodling as I talk you through these principles. It doesn't have to look pretty, and you don't have to show anybody what you put on your page. But what we're creating now is the connection between your eyes, your brain, and your hand on your page. And you're just kind of getting that warmed up. So doodle along as I talk. We have 7 principles here for how pictures work. These are principles that you can use as your starting place for making decisions around how you use your page. I'm going to run through them, and then we're going to do a very quick exercise so you get to put it into practice. So top left, hierarchy on the page. We know that if we put something dead center on our page, we give it the spotlight. We know that on a blank page, if something is higher on the page, it has more importance. But the magical thing when you step into picture land is the second you draw a horizontal line, you've now created a horizon and you've given it a landscape. And so now you can have things planted on the ground or floating in the air. That's what our brains naturally want to interpret this content as. Moving along to direction and movement. So again, this is about how our brains, without us even working on it, this is how our brains interpret what we're seeing. We perceive movement to be going from left to right because we read from left to right. So we assume that the action on a page is doing the same thing unless indicated otherwise. So if you want to show something moving towards the future, it goes to the right. If you want to take people back on a journey into the past, you can send them back towards the left-hand side of the page. Coming down into that middle line, shapes are powerful because they have some code, some symbol baked into them. And this is how our brains read them. So triangles, through their very nature, have change baked in. We even use a triangle as a symbol for change because you can't go up or down a triangle without it increasing or decreasing in size. The same way circles have motion and movement, and we expect them to cycle and change. Squares are solid. They are containers. We don't expect them to move. They have an inside and an outside, and they hold stuff. And so when we use the shapes in this way on our page, that meaning gets baked in with them. Now, size and proximity also puts some coding, some symbolism into our brains. When we have shapes that are very close together, we're showing a particular relationship. If we intentionally put space in between them, we're showing a different relationship. We've got a big green circle there and a little green circle. So like, does anyone's brain immediately go to parent and child when they look at that? Like that's the implied relationship that you see there, because they're the same shape, they're the same color, so they look like they are of the same thing. They're both, that could be symbolizing a human, but we've got a difference in size and the proximity is close together. So we intuitively take this meaning away. Building on this intuition, we then move over to the right to color. Now, this is the coding you're probably used to seeing because it's the one we're most familiar with. So we know that certain colors have certain things attached to them. So red always has a lot of emotion, whether that be anger or passion or luck. It's a strong color and it's going to have a bold meaning. Whereas blue can be sad. It can be about water, which also can be about emotions. It can literally be about sadness, or even we talk about depression as feeling blue. So that color has a certain set of feelings that we will take from it in combination with other visual cues. Coming down onto the bottom line, similar to color, I've got dark light. That's really about mood, because it's about, is something shaded and in the dark, like in the cloak of darkness, which has mystery or something secret or hidden, versus something well lit in the light, which is transparent and it feels kind of open. You can't hide in the full light of day. So you can set the mood of a picture by choosing the tone. And then similarly to shapes, I've got curve. So you can set the tone of a picture by whether lines are very perfectly straight, whether you have sharp angles that are 90 degrees, or a softer curve, which is more gentle. It might be less definitive. It might be giving more space for movement or motion or change, whereas something very sharp and pointed can feel more aggressive or even invasive. It's strong and it's pointy. So we are interpreting images that we see using this sort of encoding all of the time without even realizing it. And because we know the human brain just loves to look for patterns and find meaning in patterns, we can use this to our advantage. We can use these principles on purpose in how we put pictures together to drive meaning to the audience. Now, I'm just going to attempt my video again and see how I go. Fingers crossed. You can see me?
We can see you, Hayley.
If I freeze again, I'll turn it off, but I feel weird not having my camera on. So I'm gonna give it a go. Okay, so we're going to play around with this now. What I'm going to get you to do, we're only going to take like a minute on this. We're not going to spend a lot of time, but you're going to build on your page an abstract picture that represents a scene from a movie. Now, none of what you draw on your page has to look like the actual things. It's abstract, it's symbols. But you get to make choices around the shapes, the colors, the placement, where they are on the page, their proximity to each other, the lines that you use. You're going to get to make a bunch of choices around how you apply these principles to embed meaning, but it doesn't have to look real. So I'm going to give you an example. Now, I'm sure you all immediately recognize that this scene here is from Finding Nemo. Well, it is, but it's done using the symbols of the previous page. So I've got two triangles in the middle for the father, Marlin, and the son, Nemo. I've made them both triangles. I've made them both the same color, and I've made the color the same as the landscape because it's their natural habitat. But I've got Marlin, strong, sturdy, flat base on the ground. I've got Nemo tilted. He looks like he's in motion and that he's moving away from Marlin. Now they're focused on, well, Marlin is focused on a threat, which I've put as a bright red ball that's on the same visual plane as them. They're focused on, oh my God, the drop off. It's the threat. What they don't see is the actual threat coming from above them that I've shown as those four black triangles, which is the diver coming down to scoop Nemo up. Now, it doesn't look like a diver. They don't look like fish, but symbolically, they're representing those things. So I've chosen shapes, colors, and placement on my page to depict that scene. So I want to give you a minute or 2 minutes now to play around with this concept. Pick a movie, one that you know well, and pick a scene from it. Quite often an opening scene or a closing scene are the ones that are going to give you the most kind of visual bang for buck. Using these principles, I'll go back to them so you can see them. 2 minutes now, abstract, represent using these symbols on your page. So while you're playing with your page there, I will just share that if you're interested in looking further into these principles, this book, Picture This by Molly Bang, is amazeballs and was my original inspiration for pulling these principles out and applying them to visual storytelling, because she uses this same approach. She breaks down stories and she retells them using colored paper that she cuts into shapes. And she plays around with placement, size, color, just to show how playing with these things can change the meaning and therefore change the reaction in the audience. Now, a few people are looking up, so I think some people have got some doodles happening. Is anyone brave enough to share? I won't pick on you, but I'm just going to chuck it out there in case anyone's feeling brave.
I volunteer Alicia. Oh no, Tanya's off mute.
Well, yeah, I'm just trying to see. My camera hasn't been working well so far, so I'm not sure if you can see me, that's all. So is my camera working?
See you, but your page is very white.
Oh, okay, I'll turn. Is that any better?
Hayley, perhaps you could stop sharing so her screen's bigger just for a moment.
Oh, good idea. That makes sense. That's logical.
Is that any better? It's quite small. I'm a small writer.
That's great. So what were the decisions that you made there? Talk us through it.
Okay, so I imagine that everyone will know the scene when I say Harry met Sally. So there's a relationship of the two round faces. So I'm picturing the emotion. So the love heart within the round circle, and then the movement, the large shapes, which are the circles that are identical to each other but not quite together, depicting the relationship. And because they're in the middle of the page, there's your spotlight. Done.
Cool. Well done, and thank you so much for being brave and holding your page up. Does anyone else?
And share, yeah, I can share mine too. I'll just see if it works. Yeah. See if it's just blurring me, isn't it? How do I get that off?
I don't know.
You need to take off your blurred background. It's going to take anything other than.
How do I do that, Mel?
Well, I don't know how you put it on.
You've got stop
I don't
with
either.
a little arrow.
Go virtual background.
Just
I'll just go none.
my background.
How about that?
Yep, that'll do it.
Has that done it?
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, I'll show you.
So we got traffic lights, we got some arrows moving across, we got some vehicles.
Yeah,
Some squiggly lines coming out the top.
that was trying to show frustration from within the vehicles.
Nice. Yes, some like emotion lines. That's
Yeah.
great.
Like traffic. That was mine.
What movie?
It wasn't really a movie. I was just trying to think of a scene really quickly. Sorry. I could make something up and lie, but no, it wasn't from a movie.
My brain was like, which one is this? Is this Cars?
I thought it was
Right.
Speed 2, Taryn.
I was going to say that.
Something where you're stuck in a really annoying traffic jam. Yeah.
That's cool though. So you guys could look at that picture and immediately draw a parallel to a story, because that's the power of what we're talking about here, is that the symbols that you chose when you picked a line that was flat, when you picked to have those shapes moving in a certain direction, you picked the emotions coming off, you made decisions using those principles that put together a scene that people responded to in a way that they could see the story. And that's how kind of simple it can be, and it doesn't have to be. Our brains want pictures to work. We're looking for them to work because we're looking for the pattern, and we've got all of this symbolism just coded into us. Okay, I'm going to bring this slide pack back up, because we're going to build from here straight into icons. So if you've got those 7 principles as your starting place, now we're going to get into actually making icons. So this is not about drawing things that have to look exactly like the thing. An icon represents the thing. So as soon as your audience recognize what it's representing, it's doing its job. Any other detail you add at that point is about style. So if you can represent a tree with 3 curves and a rectangle, and people know that's a tree, it's a tree. It's doing its job. You can stop there. You can move on. Because part of what you're trying to achieve when you're visual note taking is speed. You want to be able to do these things rapidly. You're bringing people on a journey. So it's just enough visual to do that. Plus, when we're visual note taking, there's pictures and there's words, and they work together. So your picture doesn't have to stand alone, not completely. If you draw something and you're not sure that it looks exactly like the thing, you give it a label and you say, that squiggle, tree. And your audience with their pattern finding brain goes, sweet, that's a tree. I get that. And they accept it. So it's about simplifying it right down. Now, what we want to do is we want to simplify things down into the shapes that make them up, circles, squares, triangles, squiggles, and put those things together, just enough of them to represent the thing. When we do this, we can build a library of icons that we know how to draw. And one icon could represent 20 different things. And you can repeat them and reuse them because you might group them slightly differently next time. You're going to add different text because it's a different context, and you're going to reuse those icons over and over again. And that's great, because what that is doing is it's making the drawing part of visual note taking as automatic as possible, which means you're not burning cognitive power working out how to draw something. Your cognitive power is being used on the listening and the sense making and the processing of the content, and the drawing becomes automatic. So you may only be able to draw 12 things very simply, but well enough that you can do it without too much thought. And you'd just be surprised how much content you could cover with a simple set of icons. So extending on from that, because we're going to start doodling again soon. The other thing that you will draw a lot of when you are visual note taking is humans, because they're the subject. They are our audience. They are where we are getting most of our content from. They're going to play a role in most of the things you have to represent. And so you want a very quick and effective way to draw figures and faces. And you want to be able to do it in a way that people are taking from them the meaning you want them to take. So I have developed these very stylized figures because I want to tell people what the figure is there to represent. And that is generally an emotion or a verb. That's what your human figures are there to show. So I want to be able to put it into an action pose to show a verb, put an expression on its face for emotion, and put those things together. I used to do a lot more caricature drawing in my visual note taking, but people would get hung up on how I represented things or how I represented people, and sometimes the meaning got lost. So I found that when I stylized them down into what I call jelly bean people, I could get tighter on what it was there to mean. So scribble along with me here while I talk you through this. You want to kind of copy some of what you're seeing on the screen and play around with this. But when I draw figures, I always start with a circle for a head. Because the great thing is that if you're note taking and you run out of time, whack a face on that and it's enough. If you don't get time to draw the rest of the figure, you can move right along. If you do have time, you can add a body and limbs. But all of those examples of bodies on the side were just added around a head. So to get to a figure, you do just need to add a body. The one top left is the one I tend to use the most. Circle for a head, a line down either side, line at the bottom. Again, if that's all you've got time to draw, it's clearly a figure. Add some text around why you're drawing a figure, visual note, move on to the next piece of content. Limbs can be very simply lines, and you can put a circle on the end for hands and feet. Once you've got a base figure that looks like that, then you can move those limbs around and put them in different poses, have them doing different things. But it's all the same, simple lines, simple shapes. The same with your faces. They don't have to be complex. 2 eyes and a mouth is really all you need for to express most emotions. Eyebrows can come in handy, but not critical. But you don't need to add ears or a nose or hair or any of those other things that can take a long time to draw unless you want to. Unless, that's a style choice if you want to add it. I tend to do eyes as 2 ovals and I draw them close together for the reason that I can then move that pair of eyes around on the face. And by just, the circle started the same and I just move the eyes left to right, up, down, and then suddenly I can be looking down and to the side to be sad. I can look up and be surprised. I can draw 2 characters beside each other and put the eyes so they're looking at each other. Same circles, same body, slightly different eye placement. So it's very fast to get this content down. So have a play. Has anyone got a little jelly bean critter on their page that they would like to hold up and share?
Yeah, I can share. I don't know if I'm on my phone, so I'm not sure if my camera is going to quite do much work, but I've just done 3 little, just to play around with some feelings. Just a little thinking guy.
Yes.
A little wave, and then I don't know what the top corner one is. He's just sort of shocked, maybe.
It's surprised.
Yeah.
But they're so simple, but so effective. Like you look at them and you go, oh, little critters, what are they doing? And you want to engage
really
with them.
cute.
You know their story, but you can draw those very fast and you can draw them on repeat because you're adding other words, content, you're adding other icons to give them meaning. Once you've got a set of figures and a set of faces, you can just keep rolling them out and replaying them. The repetition actually helps form a style as well as your visual note taking. The more you repeat colors, repeat shape patterns, repeat how you represent things, the more cohesive your page becomes because you form a style around it. Okay, so I'm going to share my iPad now instead of my screen. I'm going to draw a couple of icons together. And then I have a challenge for you to create the start of your library. Okay, can you all see my iPad screen?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, so thinking about the fact that we make an icon out of shapes, I'm going to talk you through, and we'll draw it together, a robot. So I always start with a rectangle for a head. It's even a wonky rectangle. I don't even like that rectangle. Then I do a slightly bigger rectangle for the body. All right, so I then join the head and the body with a couple of curved lines. Add some rectangles for a face. Little curve on top and a squiggle for an antenna.
Hayley, you're going to make all my dreams come true tonight. Mine's actually looking like yours.
Excellent. Now to do the arms, I literally just do a series of curved lines that get slightly bigger down the side. The little rectangle for a hand at the bottom. Now, I used to give my robots legs, but I found that legs take too long. So now I make them floating robots. Because it's faster. And once you add the shadow, it's clearly hovering above the ground. So we built that by just going basic. Okay, I need a head, I'll do a rectangle. I need a body, a rectangle. How can I join those up? A couple of curves for the arms. Like nothing there that makes that robot up is complex. And it's highly repeatable. And if you think about just how much stuff you could use a robot to represent. So I draw robots for artificial intelligence, chatbots, science, technology, planning for the future, science fiction, same icon. I draw the same robot every time. I can draw Eve from Wall-E is my only other alternative. But I just repeat the same icons over and over again is my point. You don't have to be able to draw a million different robots. You just need one, and then you can use it in a bunch of different ways. Okay, so we're going to repeat that process now, that thinking of breaking up the shape into its components. And I'm going to give you 12 concepts, and you're going to have a crack at making an icon for each one. So if you want to, you can start by ruling up your page into 12 squares. I do encourage you, as I read each one of these out, to write the word first, because then it's about, you've got the concept and you're just adding an icon to illustrate the word, because that's the pattern your brain wants to be in when you're in visual note-taking mode. So I'm going to chuck 12 things at you. I'm not going to give you long, and I want you to think about, how can I represent this in the simplest way possible, just building it out of shapes. What are the simple shapes that make these things up? So the first one is a teapot. How could you show a teapot with simple lines? The second one is a book. How could you show a book? What's the simplest lines you need to represent a book? The third one is a tree. How can you show a tree? Okay, getting a little less literal now. Number 4, profit. How could you represent profit? Now, I have P-R-O-F-I-T written down. Someone did once draw P-R-O-P-H-E-T for me, and I was very impressed. Number 5 is team. How could you represent a team? Number 6, tools. How could you represent tools? Seven, growth. How could you represent growth? Number 8, internet. I need that icon tonight to show bad internet. 9, relationship. Ten, road. How could you show a road? 11, electricity. And the last one, footsteps. How could you show footsteps? How did you go? I'd love some reflections. How did you find that? Did you get one or two things that kind of look like the thing?
I think your growth is much more fancy than my growth. Brooke, how'd you go?
Pretty basic, and I'm drawing on the cardboard part of my notepad. Yeah, I was like, oh, hang on, what did tools look like? So yeah, no, this is good tips. Thank you. Book, yeah, doesn't look like that.
So what's great about this is you may not have loved everything you drew on your page then, but you've drawn it once. You can now decide what you like or don't like about that icon, and you can iterate until you get it to a point where you do like that icon. You may have nailed some of them that you've gone, I can repeat that. It works. And I know I can use it over and over again. And what's great is that this is now the start of your library. So just think about how many different things you could use each of these icons for. So I know teapot seems random, but I always do visual agendas when I'm bringing people together, and I'll put a teapot to represent a break to show that we're going to pause and get a cuppa at 10 a.m. and I'll draw a teapot. You can imagine how often you can use an icon for team. Again, tree, it might seem random, but we talk with so many things we will use trees as metaphors for. It could mean sustainability. It could be about the environment. It could be about organic growth. There's a number of different things that a tree could represent. The same with that road. Imagine, think about in your careers as communicators, how often you talk about things going on a journey. That road could hold 1,000 different journeys just through adding additional icons and text around it. But if you can draw a road, you've got the basis for a roadmap. So as you come up with your list of icons, things that you can draw with limited cognitive load, and you start to build in the list of what all of those things can represent, you can now see how this little bank of visuals comes in handy. Now when you're visual note-taking, you're not in complete stress mode trying to work out how to draw everything. You're listening, you're processing, and you're using icons and words together to represent concepts on your page, and you're choosing how you put them on your page because you've got principles to make choices around that. And that's the guts of visual storytelling right there.
Hayley, just wondering, have you got a really super simple one for tools? Because yours look great, obviously, but something that's even simpler than that.
I will draw a saw. It's quite simple because you can get the zigzaggy edge, the straight edge, and then just a rectangle for a handle.
Okay, that's a good idea.
I'll share my iPad screen, but I have a feeling it's going to make my video freeze again. That hammer, if you try repeating it, I draw the handle first, the rectangle. I draw the flat curve on the right-hand side, the hitting surface. Next, a little curve over the top. And then you can see both little teeth hanging down on the left, but that can just be one pointy line on that side, and it will still look like a hammer. A a hammer is good because it can be a tool, but you can also have a hammer and a nail, which then has a whole bunch of other things that opens up around nailing things, like getting them right or knocking something on the head, or like there's a whole lot of visual analogy that comes with a hammer and a nail. So any other thoughts on those icons, or anyone else like to be brave and share their page?
I can share mine. I just don't want it. I did it in Procreate as well. And full disclosure here, I've done a visual comms sketchnoting course with Hayley previously. So let me do that. Okay.
Oh, do you want me to stop sharing?
It should just stop automatically. One would hope.
Looks like it's fine.
There we go. Okay. See that?
It's coming.
There we go.
Fabulous, beautiful colors too.
So I didn't obviously do the shading or any of that sort of stuff, but my tree does probably look more like broccoli, but it could be broccoli as well. It could double for broccoli if I was talking about vegetables.
It could be because it's whatever you tell us it is, right? Add a label and that's the way your audience will interpret it.
So that's mine.
Beautiful.
Oh, sorry.
I love it.
I have been sketchnoting your presentation too, just for practice.
Oh,
There we go. See?
Oh, that's
Not that
so very
hard.
cool. I sketchnote so many presentations. It's very cool to see myself sketchnoted.
There we go. Oh, don't know how to. There we go.
Love it.
Should be back over to you, Hayley.
Awesome. So are we out of time?
We are almost out of time.
So I guess I won't add any more content into your brains because it was a bit of a taster, but I will, I guess, take any questions that anyone might have. No questions?
Hi, I just would like to say you're amazing.
Oh, thank you, Paula.
Because I never could draw anything, and I've done mine on paper, and looks much better than ever. And with the concept, and I'm quite perfectionist, so I never think it's good enough. So yeah, today it's quite. I can't see my video, isn't it? I'd love to show you, but yeah, for me it's great. So thank you very much.
Oh, that's great to hear. You're always your own harshest critic when it comes to drawing. Like, remember that your audience want your pictures to work. They're looking for it to work because they want to make sense out of it because that makes them feel good. So
yeah, I'm a researcher, I'm a scientist, so it's sometimes it's quite hard. You accept non-perfect shapes, non-perfect things, because as a scientist I always want the perfection. So but it's really nice because I'm trying to expand and like not only give talks for professionals but give some science for the public, so this helps a lot.
Great way to connect with a general audience. Yeah, fabulous.
Yeah, exactly. It's much easier. Yeah, thank you. And I'm in UK, by the way, quite far from you, and morning here.
Oh, cool. Well, thanks for joining us from all the way away.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks for those reflections, Paula. I think I feel similarly, as I'm sure other people on the call do. You know, I definitely don't think I can draw to save my life, and I'm quite pleasantly surprised with what I've been able to produce here. But look, does anyone else have any sort of final questions before? I'm just going to share a few things with you before, so please don't go away, just for sort of 2 minutes, if everyone just wants to. So thank you so much for tonight, Hayley. I I've never, I haven't enjoyed doodling so much for quite a while, and I know it's going to be really useful, and I just encourage everyone to keep doing it, keep developing your set of icons that Hayley's got us started tonight. So thank you so much, Hayley, and please feel free to connect with Hayley on LinkedIn, and her company is called Thoughts Drawn Out, so please feel free to jump online and have a look at that. And look, following tonight's event, everyone who has a ticket, you will get a link to the video with recording of tonight's event. So if you do want to practice some of those things again, you can watch it back. And look, something some of you might or may not know is that 6 months following any of our IABC Queensland events, we do put the events live up on our YouTube channel. So just Google YouTube IABC Queensland and you'll find us. So go and check it out. We've got some very cool past events on there that you can watch back. We've also posted in the chat tonight just a short feedback survey. And when I say short, I really mean short. It'll take you about a minute to complete. And look, your feedback's extremely valuable to us because it helps us to know what you like and what you'd like to see changed with all of our future events. So if you could just take a moment to do that, we'd love it. And for our next event, because while we have absolutely loved running virtual only events, we feel like it's time for everyone to come face to face. So we're just going to have drinks, nibbles and networking, all covered by IABC Queensland. But come out, join us at the Storybridge Hotel on Thursday, the 28th of April. So we are going to do a few networking games, but apart from that, it's really just an opportunity to come out and spend some time with the comms community. So please jump onto Eventbrite, secure your ticket so we know about numbers, and I believe Hayley's going to come along that night as well. So if you can borrow a pen from behind the bar, pick up a napkin, and you might be able to develop a few icons with Hayley over a drink that night.
Yeah, we can communicate purely through pictures if you like.
Actually, that could be a networking game. Well,
that could be fun.
We'll get the board to have a think about that one. So look, please come along if you can on the 28th. It's been a long time, everyone. So we really just want to get back together. The other thing is, just want to mention also our partners at Wrapped. They're our video partners. Please check them out at wrapped, wrappt.com.au. They're a fantastic organisation that make video really easy. And last but not least, I know we've got quite a few newbies and also some non-members on our call tonight. If you're not a member and you're interested in becoming a more formalised part of our community, getting highly discounted or free tickets to our events, as well as access to all the fantastic IABC global resources and events, now is the month to join because it's member month. So it's at a hugely discounted rate just for this month only. So really jump onto that. You can see on the screen, it's $237. It's great value this month. The other thing that we're offering, if you have been impacted negatively by the Queensland floods, just simply send us an email at iabcqld@gmail.com and let us know, and we'll take another 50% off that membership, and our chapter will cover those dues. The other thing that we're also offering is our student membership. So if you know any students, it's great value and great to get a kickstart in your career. It's $40 a year through member month. And also we've got discounts on group and corporate memberships. So if you've been sitting on the fence or you've been considering joining IABC Queensland, now's the time to make the leap, join us for a really friendly community, and we'd love to see you at some future events. So without further ado, thank you very much everyone for joining us tonight. Thank you, Hayley. It's been a great session, and have a lovely rest of your evening.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you so much. Have a great night, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Georgia. See you on the 28th.
Thank you.